Hello, YouTube, and welcome back to another week of VCT Pacific Rostermania. My name is William Cho, one of the casters here on VCT Pacific, and it's been, I believe, 3 weeks since we last made a roster update video. In between, we've taken a look at Red Bull Homegrounds, talked about Zeta's new roster there, and then last week I actually wasn't able to make a video due to some personal emergencies, but we're back and just in time for some big news. And I would say, for the most part, quite unforeseen news. So let's jump right into it. It's been a little while, so let's just review how things have been working out. We do have our little color code here, if I can zoom in on it, right? So we've got blue for signed 100%, aka was officially announced. Green is likely. Yellow is just kind of rumors floating out there. Red means that they've been removed, and purple are like personal guesses and or recommendations, suggestions, things like that. So if you're kind of just looking for factual updates, purple is the one you want to pay the least attention to, because that's just my own personal thoughts. There's not too much of it, don't worry. And last we checked, so bold means that this is new since our last update, but let's just go through real quick teams that we had known about for their full roster. That would include Paper Rex. Obviously, they rounded it out with Monette pretty early on. DRX made no changes as far as we're aware. Now, a lot of us thought T1 was complete. It's funny because I left them on green. So I color code the team name, depending on if I think they're done or not. And just because... It's funny to say, we'll get into this, but just because I thought the 6-man roster was kind of interesting, I was like, I wonder if they're going to make any more changes, like maybe remove a player or something. I left them on green, and surprise, surprise, they actually added a player, so we'll talk about that here in a second. Zeta had completed their roster in our last video, adding in 2 new youngsters, one from their academy and one from their ex-academy, Hiron and Uran. That looks good. Team Secret had added NDG. Gen.G, they had only had 3 players until then. We'll talk about the recent addition of Munchkin. RRQ was complete with a Gemkin. GE was complete. Talon just rounded out their crew, so we'll talk about that. And then Bleed, of course, rounded out their roster with Yay as they now enter into that 2-year slot for VCT Pacific. DFM, we will talk about it. Actually, Takajay should be bolded. Well, I guess he shouldn't be, but he should be bolded here, and he should be out. He's not out of the org, but he's, we're just going to put him as CC. Is that what I did for 10? Because that's what 10's doing now, but we'll do that. Content creator, that's what they are. Okay, let's go in order. Actually, should we? Let's not, because this is a big one to unpack. T1 is a big one to unpack. So let's talk Gen.G. Gen.G announced the addition of Munchkin, the ex-T1 player, and of course, if for some reason you just weren't watching Valorant at all in 2023, you might remember him from his days in Crazy Raccoon, back in the Challengers Japan days, prior to the whole triple region thing we've got going on right now, the partner leagues. So Munchkin, obviously a very storied player, both in Valorant and prior to that in Overwatch as well. He's got a pretty, weighty career under him. And I think obviously that experience helps a lot. Now, during his time on T1, he seemed to kind of be the player that they said, okay, if we need to try a role swap, like you're the one who's going to do it. You're the one who's going to fill the slots. For the most part, he was playing Sentinel. But there are times when he was playing the Breach and things like that. Obviously, back in the day, he was busy playing the Duelist and Crazy Raccoon as well. So he's got experience across the entire board, quite flexible. But on T1, while he was one of those players where when push came to shove, he would clutch up. But also, if they weren't on the verge of losing everything, he would often be a big part of why they lost certain rounds. And I think a part of this was just kind of the communication and decision making within the team, right? Because when you see him clutch up, like clearly when he's at his best, his aim was still pretty crisp. His decision making when he was left alone to his own devices was fairly decent. But when he had to be the one going on his own lurks, or he had to kind of anchor down on his own, he wasn't as trustworthy as I don't know, let's say someone like King, right? For anchoring down. You're just like, okay, well, that dude's going to anchor down. Like, he's going to defend that site. He's going to take at least one with him, if not 2. Munchkin wasn't as reliable, but when he needed to, yeah, he would clutch up with some good aim, some good decision making in 1vx situations. And again, the experience definitely helps, right? He's had to lead different teams and things like that. Now, on T1, he was often noted as being kind of a secondary caller. We're not entirely sure how that worked out. It does seem like at the end of the day, Zeta was always known to be the IGL of that team, but I wouldn't be surprised if Munchkin was always chiming in, especially with the role he was playing on Sentinel most of the time. So where do I stand on Munchkin? I think he's a fine player. Do I think he is the absolute cream of the crop anymore? No, not really. I'm just going to be brutally honest. I think those days are somewhat behind him. Granted, role swaps or meta changes could put an effect on that. However, I think he's fine. I mean, you already have, you have Meteor, Texture, and Lakia. These are 3 players with very high peaks and absolutely super clutch power, right? So I've talked about this before, is unless you know the chemistry is going to work 100%, if you have 3 really strong players who have the X factor and things like that, or who shine in their role extraordinarily, then I think the other 2 actually just being these kind of known values and constants is fairly good. Now, there is an argument there of, well, didn't you just say Munchkin maybe wasn't that consistent? And yes, I would agree to that. However, if he's now put in a role where it's like, okay, you literally just have to just fill your position and help call and make decisions, then I think he could be okay. I will say this. When I look at this team, here's my biggest thing. I see a lot of ego on this team with just the 4 players already. So I am curious how the chemistry is going to work out. And just because I say ego, it doesn't mean like they're not friendly or whatever. You could be good friends with someone, but you could still have a clash of egos if you had to work together, right? So, yeah, that's the part I would be a little wary of. However, I also know that within the Korean community, HSK is still quite well respected just in his own career. Obviously, again, I've talked about this before globally. He hasn't proven anything, especially as a coach. So you probably have a lot of question marks. But what I do know is that at least among like players and insiders, people respect HSK. So especially with the, culture in Korea of respecting, people, your seniors and things like that, maybe there's some faith to be had that HSK can rein this team in and make sure the egos aren't clashing too much. And if you can do that, I think they're looking like an okay team. I think they're looking like a fairly strong team. I'm not going to say adding Munchkin suddenly shoots them higher up in my rankings or anything like that, but I think Munchkin kind of just keeps them right where I would have rated them even with just the core of Meteor, Texture, Lakia. So I think that's okay. Munchkin, again, there's a little bit of risk involved with his inconsistency, but enough role swaps and things like that. And I gotta imagine you're adding him in here to help call, to kind of lead the team in decision making. So if they can make sure he's put in a position of like Sentinel or something like that, where he can really work on that, or just always consistently flash initiator or something like that, then hopefully he can get his groove back. With this lineup, I still stand by Bozzy being a fairly good pickup for this team. Now, that would have to put Munchkin on primary smokes, so I don't know how he feels about that. But, you put Texture on Sentinel, put Lakia on Info, put Bozzy on Flex/Flash. Or Lakia could be Info/Flex. I mean, both of them, right? Lakia plays the Rays and things like that. So I think Bozzy would be fine. Now, Bozzy is also kind of an easy guess, in my opinion. I actually would like to see them pick up someone relatively newer at this point, right? You've got 3 fairly powerhouse players from Korea. You've got a veteran. I mean, the other guys are quite veterans in Valorant as well. All of them basically, playing in Korea or Japan since the beginning of Valorant. So, add in someone new who you think really has the talent and grow them up. I think that'd be great to see. But if you wanted an easy out just to be like, okay, we're rebuilding, like here's where we're starting, we want to have a good starting point, I think Bozzy could still work. So I don't think this guess is too crazy of an idea, but we'll have to wait and see. We're getting told from chat, Gen.G is invited to Divergence off-season tournament in India, so they're going to have to show their 5th. So we'll find out soon enough. But overall, yeah, the Munchkin news. I mean, I basically think this isn't anything to write home about. I don't think it's that shocking. I think it's fine. I don't think it's like extraordinarily amazing, but I think it's fine. Okay, which bag of rabbits do we want to unpack first between T1 and Talon? I don't even know where to start. Let's start with T1. Mostly just because, so I just recently did a stream with Samsung Odyssey and T1, and Rossi was actually a part of it, so I had a chance to just chat with him and have fun with Rossi and Carpe. There is a second stream for that coming up as well on Friday, Korea time, if you want to check it out. That's going to be with Sideplayer and Izu. But anyway, so T1 had 6 players basically announced in the offseason already. A lot of people thought the roster is complete. You've got 6. If anything, maybe you even remove 1. And then people were wondering, like, or at least, have someone who's just permanently on the bench. And a lot of people were saying, well, who's it going to be? Like, is it Carpe or is Izu kind of there in the Foxy 9 style? Like, what's going on here? And then just out of the blue, nobody asked for this. Nobody expected this. Everyone thought T1 was just set and ready to go. They had already been participating in off-season events, granted without Excure being able to be there due to visas. But then suddenly T1 was like, by the way, Rossi's joining from Turtle Troop, and he's on our starting lineup. And it's like, oh, okay. Listen, I mean, this is all the stuff, and I think everyone would agree. I think what everyone agrees on is, no matter what you're seeing about this decision, it actually has so little to do with Rossi himself, and it's just so many question marks about the team. I mean, you have 7 people for one, right? And we've barely seen 6-man rosters work. So, I mean, sure, you could have like 1 permanently on the bench and then 1 flexing in and out, in theory, but the whole flexing in and out thing, there's been like 1, maybe 2 teams that kind of made it work. Not much else from that. So, where is this going? I mean, who knows? Now, to talk about Rossi a bit, I mean, again, it has nothing to, it almost to me has 0 to do with Rossi. It's just, well, did you need this? Did you need Rossi? There has to be something else going on. There has to be something else going on in terms of decision making and reasoning here. Because I wouldn't say, so assuming that even before that we were assuming Secure was on the starting roster, then whether it was Izu or Carpe filling in, because we would assume that they would only sign King to have him on the starting roster. It's not like I would look at this team and be like, well, it's not like I'm looking at it and saying, well, they probably need some switch in firepower, or I guess the positions kind of weren't working out. I mean, I don't know if they still are, to be very honest. Sure, yeah, you have Rossi now, who's who can flex around quite a bit, and filling in the supposedly primary smokes role is nice. That way Zeta can focus on Initiator, I guess. But okay, so if Rossi and Excured are starting, let's actually, I don't even know who to move here, but let's try that. Let's even assume that this is also part of the change. Let's assume this is the starting 5. Izu and Carpe perhaps interchangeable. So let's assume Saya's still playing Duelist, because I can't imagine what else he would be playing. Excuritus Sentinel. Let's say you put Rossi on Smokes. So you're needing Zeta as your main initiator and then Izu as your flex. Okay, so Izu or Carpe works there. But then like, what's King doing here, right? And King can only, like, he's literally only played Sentinel. And we're yeah, he's now finally learned to play Viper, but as a Sentinel. So he's also like never really played Chamber except for like fun here and there, like once or twice. So like if you're, I don't know, if Rossi and Excured are both on the starting roster, I guess, I mean, I guess this is an option, right? I guess this is an option. And I guess Excured is flexing in that case. That's a possibility. But yeah, I mean, like these two, Coach Autumn says Rossi and Excured are on the starting roster. I cannot imagine Saya is not on the starting roster. And I mean, I don't know. I don't know why you would keep Zeta if he's not on the starting roster. Now, with Rossi there, I mean, I think Rossi, you know, with the whole calling, I guess Rossi could help fill that a bit, but like, yeah, but then here's the other thing is that, okay, so are we going with like one IGL? Are we just going with Hive Mind? Like, what's the idea here? I think even with a Hive Mind, at the end of the day, you still want someone who can kind of put their foot down. PaperX is, again, like the only team where I really don't see them needing that. And even then, I would argue that maybe Devai kind of fills that role for that team, even back when Benkai was there, I think. So, I have no idea. However, I will say this. There's no way they're keeping 7 players. I don't see that working out. If anything, they should just create an academy team. Like if T1 just wanted to be like, well, let's just grow a bunch of talent, then just make an academy team. Don't put 2 on the bench and have them never actually playing any matches. At least in an academy team, you can keep sending them out to third-party stuff or whatever, or keep scrimming fully against your main team. Chat saying T1 wants to be EG. Well, oof, I don't know if anyone wants to be EG right now, but yeah, but if you're gonna do that, then add 3 more people. You know what I mean? Like, don't stop at 7. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know what to tell you, but my gut tells me that this roster isn't complete. They're either adding or removing more. In my mind. If they stop here and this is locked in at the start of 2024 VCT, then boy oh boy am I more interested in this than we were in global esports last year. All right? That's how crazy I think it is. So again, I mean, I'm very curious. To see how Rossi adapts to Pacific. Now, I will say, I think bringing in a player from either EMEA or Americas is actually pretty helpful for Pacific if you have the right team environment and communication channels. Just because the history of FPSs, the meta interpretation, even just in Valorant, things like that, are going to be very different from region to region. So if you bring in someone who's had a fair bit of experience in that region, even if it's at Challengers, but as long as it's at least in Challengers, let's put it that way, then I think it can be good, especially for Pacific, especially for a lot of teams in Pacific who just don't have as storied of a history across different FPSs, who haven't, competed in other regions and against other regions a lot in FPSs. A lot of Pacific's weaknesses in the past used to be that you just didn't have a broader open mind about interpreting and innovating your own style, right? This is why DRS and PaperX continued to lead the overall region for all this time, because they were 2 of those teams who had not only a lot of past experience from CS or other games, but on top of that, therefore, they were working on their own to figure out their own Valorant. And a lot of other teams just kind of sat there and were like, well, I guess we're copying DRX, or most people didn't try to copy PaperX because you can't really, but right, most people looked at DRX and was like, oh, I guess that's how you should play Valorant. And then you try to do that, but then you're never going to beat them because you're just trying to learn from them. So bringing in someone else who maybe has different ideas, different interpretations, different attitude about the game, I think it's helpful. Just a breath of fresh air. Whether it works out in the long term or not, it depends. But I think even for just 1 year, I think it's a very helpful idea. So I'm actually all aboard the Rossi edition here. especially after, I mean, maybe I'm a little biased because we just did that stream with Samsung Odyssey, and Rossi's a really funny guy. So it was very chill. He was great to work with. Good vibes all around. So maybe I'm a little biased, but you know, here's the thing is that I think Rossi can work. That's not the part I have questions about. The question just is why? It's not that I don't think Rossi can work. I think Rossi can work for T1, but why? And why after Izu, King, and Xcurate? And here's the other thing. Here's a crazy idea is let's assume, not that you want to assume because that makes an ass out of you and me, but let's assume that the new signings were all because they were confident these new players are going to work well in 2024 for T1. That would mean if we are trimming the roster, we are eliminating at least one, if not two, out of Zeta, Carpe, and Saya player. Yeah, I don't know how that sounds either. Now, there is a world where maybe they signed someone and then it doesn't work out, and then you unsign them. It happened with Gen.G last year, so there is a world, or you know, something personal comes up. There's reasons that can happen, and so we'll have to wait and see. But my guess is we're keeping this on green because if anything, we should take away the green because I've got to be 99% confident that this is not going to be the final roster. Either they are going full in-house, adding more players, and having a secondary team to scrim and swap in and out, or they are going to trim this roster. However, since Autumn tweeted out that Rossi and Xcurate are both going to be in the starting lineup, and Autumn tweeted out asking for a tutor to help them learn clear comms in English, I imagine Rossi and Xcurate are now the new core of T1. We'll have to see. We'll have to see how that works out. Actually, now that you mention it, you know what? There is actually a good chance, at least in the beginning of the year, that this is the starting roster. These three are the most experienced with English out of these five. So there is that world. Maybe these two need more time to learn clear comms in English. It sounds like they want to comm only in English, not like 90% or something. So, because with Ban, it was a case where Ban could still understand Korean if it was slipped in there, but with Rossi and Xcurate, that'd be tough. So, yeah. Again, I mean, roles can work here if Carpe continues to learn more flex. When we did that stream with Carpe and Rossi for Samsung Odyssey, Carpe was mentioning that, you know, he now feels that he's really used to Valorant fully. Obviously, it takes some time to adjust, but he seems fairly confident that he's gotten used to the game. So maybe he's confident enough to flex around. That would give you 3 people who can op as well. So a little bit of flexibility on what type of agent is opping where. That could be good too. But we'll just have to wait and see. But this was, this was a case of nobody asked for this, nor did they expect this. Nobody is really against it, but we all have question marks. And I don't think the story is over. So we'll wait and see. Now let's move on to Talon. Now Talon's a case where we all wanted something to happen because nothing was happening for a while, and a very big thing happened. So they just added 3 new players, rounding out their squad to a 6-man roster. They added Ban, who used to play for T1, of course, previously from North America. Governor, also from North America. Actually from Turtle Troop, same as Rossi, and then Lenny from Team Secret. Again, not choices a lot of us expected, except for Lenny somewhat, and then, I mean, Governor because the rumors were going around. But Ban was kind of a, oh, yeah, I mean, I guess that, yeah, that is an option. This is another case of like, okay, so who's the actual starting 5? If I had to guess, this is my guess. I don't know why I didn't just drag it over. It's either this or, sorry, It's either this or I don't know. I don't know if Lenny would be satisfied sitting on the bench again for a whole year. I mean, I guess it depends on your salary, but I can't imagine he'd be satisfied with that. And I'd be very disappointed if they put Jit Boys on the bench. While I was a huge fan of Garnett's play, I do think Jit Boys provided a lot more value overall, so I'd be very disappointed if they put Jit Boys on the bench. They cleverly did not mention who the fifth player was going to be in their announcement video. They had Cruz as the main character, picking out cards that signified Ban, Governor, and Lenny, and then they had Cruz as the final card that's like supposed to tie the team together. And then I don't think maybe I skipped around on the video, but I don't think they mentioned either Jit Boys or Pat. So we'll have to wait and see. But okay, let's assume Ban is playing. I mean, he was learning smokes, but he was clearly much better on the jet. Well, I guess this is all time. I wish there was like a year mark here, but he was much better on the jet. Now, the problem being Governor's primarily playing duelists as well, and he does play more duelists than Ban. So that leads me to think Governor's going to be the main duelist. But they had Ban's card be the whole like 5 swords thing in the announcement video, so I don't know. Maybe Ban's supposed to be the jet, and Governor's going to be flexing around as double duelist or not. I don't know. Don't know how that works. Lenny's going to be playing initiative if he plays at all, which again, I'd be very surprised if Lenny was content being on the bench again for another team. But we know Cruz can flex around between main smokes and initiator, so that's fine. Jip Boys started to take on more of the sentinel role, so that's fine. So if you have main initiator, smoke, sentinel, and then yeah, I guess they can kind of flex around. I mean, I don't know. Here's the thing: is Patty Fan started looking a lot better on things like Harbor and Omen towards the end, but again, these are smokes who are like really trying to set up plays and play much more proactively, rather than like a Brimstone Astra Viper, so to speak. So that's where I wonder if Patty Pan's kind of just going to be on the side and be this figurehead. Cruz being in the announcement video is showing that he can bridge the gap between English and Thai. Oh, that too. Yeah. That's a good point, because Talon used to always have that problem of Cruz had to be their own translator all the time because most other players didn't feel comfortable speaking English, including Patty Fan, although he could, and sometimes he did. If they had the choice, they often preferred to speak through Cruz. So, and Cruz is obviously very fluent in both languages. So that makes sense. So, yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that Cruz is still going to be part of the starting roster. I can't imagine, especially with the language barrier there. Yeah, but now we go back to the whole T1 thing. If we're considering language barrier, I mean, I guess this makes more sense, right? But man, I don't know. If they put Jit Boys on the bench, even for just the beginning, I think a lot of people would be disappointed, myself included. Did they confirm that? Can we? Oh, did they? I don't think they did. There might be rumors about it. I mean, if someone has a source, let me know. Because boy, oh boy, I would be disappointed. Just because I think Jit Boys brought so much value, and I don't know, it opened up the team a lot more. Was it in a tweet by the team? Was it in a tweet by the team? Well, he's in the He's in the video talking next to Ban and Governor. Unless he says it in this video, I'm on the bench. I don't know. I mean, obviously, this is just off-season tournaments. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, again, if you find it, do let me know. But I have not seen it. I haven't heard it, at least not from an official channel that I know of. If it's a tweet, I very well could have missed it. But so I can't imagine that. I'm going to guess that this is it. It's either this or Pat goes in and Lenny comes out in my head. I think either one works. It's just I would be surprised if Lenny was content being on the bench again, whereas I think Patty Fan might be okay with now being on the bench, especially considering his history with his wrist. You know, it's one of those bittersweet moments with Patty Fan always where it's like, well, I mean, him taking a longer break but still being part of the scene would be great, but obviously he wants to play, and I'm not in any position to tell him otherwise, so yeah, let's assume that this is it, right? I mean, we have the new additions. Let's put them into the calculation. So Cruz, Lenny, Jip Boys, Ban, Governor. Here's the thing is I actually think this former roster with Garnett's Fox and Sushi Boys, you know, whichever combination of those three in the starting five, I thought it had really strong potential. And I think we saw glimpses of that in the very last 2 matches that they played of the regular season. So I don't know where to weigh this. Okay, so there was a leak, it looks like, or a report. I'm not sure if it's a leak or a report. We'll click on it. Okay. Well, and then we've got Cruz is 6, not Jip Boy. So I guess we don't know. Maybe they don't know. So, yeah, so I don't really know if I can say if this is an upgrade or not. And I think a lot of people would agree. I think a lot of people are in the same boat. There might be some people who are just like, if you're just basing it off of results, you're like, well, anything's an upgrade because they were also nearly at the very bottom next to DFM. If DFM wasn't so catastrophic, Talon would have been at the bottom. So, yeah, if you're going off of results, I guess you just look at it and say, well, this has to be an upgrade, right? Like, you know, Ban had some shining moments on T1, you know, Governor, he's got a pretty strong history. I mean, Lenny used to have some hype behind him, although he only played 1 game last year, and it was on Gecko against DRX in a deciding map, and that didn't go so well. So, yeah, but I just think this original crew had potential. Now, it didn't work out. And that's what happens with potential. Sometimes you just never discover it, and that's a shame. But therefore, since when we do prior rankings, it is based on potential, I don't know if I can say if I think this team is stronger. I actually think on paper, potential wise, I think it's either equal or weaker. Well, that's not fair, because that's with me having seen the strength of Jip Boys and Garnets at their best at times. So maybe I say it's equal. Yeah, but I guess so. If it is this 5, let's say, I mean, yeah, it would be weird if Pat was also, you know, after trying to play for so much last year, it would be weird if he was sitting on the bench, unless again, it's because of his wrist. But anyway, if this is it, I guess Cruz is playing Smokes. Or Cruz and Ban together, right, for double smokes at times, I guess. But Lenny mostly plays flat, info initiator, so... Oh, no, I guess he started to play... well, he used to only play Sova. Let's correct that. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess Lenny could pick up more flash. That poor 1 could go back. I mean, yeah, Lenny Initiator, one way or another. Cruz could flex between Flash and Smokes. Ban could flex between Smokes and Duelist. I mean, I think Ban shined so much better when he was on the Jet. He just looked a lot more comfortable. Again, obviously, because he's played it for much longer, but I imagine you kind of want that. That's where he had clutch moments, was when he was playing the Jet. And then that puts kind of Governor in a weird spot. I mean, you could always play double Duelist on certain maps, but not every map. So this is a case of we'll have to wait and see. Now, a lot of these players I think are capable of picking up different roles, right? I mean, even Ban to an extent. While it didn't seem very successful nor consistent, it was good enough, and maybe he continued to brush on that throughout the offseason and going into 2024, and he could continue to grow as a smokes player. That's a possibility. I do think, players like Cruz, Patty Fan, even Jip Boys to a certain amount, Ban, they've all shown during last year in Pacific that they can flex around and pick up new agents. So I'm not as flabbergasted about the role distribution here as I was with certain other rosters in the beginning, but I am very curious, and I guess we don't really know who the sixth man is going to be, but hopefully they stick with a starting five. Especially if they're going to have to figure out language barrier plus people learning different agents. That's definitely not the time to add in someone coming in and out as a sixth man. Again, I'm all for teams experimenting with that. A lot of people seem to be wanting to just write it off as an idea altogether just because we haven't seen a team really make it work. I do think it's very, very difficult. I do think it requires a lot more work. And I guess I agree that it's probably not worth it in the long run. But I think there's some possibility. So, but with Talon, I don't think now's the time. So we'll have to wait and see. They do have Pat as the reserve on the contract database. So I think that's what we're going to work off of. And I think that does make the most sense, other than the language part. But I think that makes the most sense. So let's assume this is a starting five. I mean, again, if anything, I kind of rank them similar to how I would have ranked them at the beginning of last year. It's like, okay, I mean, I think there's some potential, but we have no idea. I mean, especially if it's only two from the previous core working together to bring up these three up to speed, then who knows what that looks like. I think this is a good time to revisit our overall weekly rankings, though, since we took a break from them for a little while. Let me change this so we can all see it. Insert column right. Let's see, where are we at? Okay. So let's copy over what we had last time. So here's the thing. I don't know if I keep T1 on fourth. Mostly because I just don't have faith in this whole 7-man roster. And I have a feeling that it's not set yet. I do think I start to rate Zeta a decent amount higher. So, okay, let's get rid of that. Okay. Ooh. Man, does Zeta jump all the way up here? Probably not. T1 definitely does not get blown all the way down here. Why is this not the same format? What is going on here? What am I missing? Oh, Gen.G. Oh, man, this is hard. How's it going? Chat? What do you guys think here? I mean, Paper STRX, I think these are interchangeable for rankings. RQ, I've always said it. There's a little bit of the hopium and hypium on my end, but I do think they look like a very strong team on paper. Now, Zeta looks a lot stronger than before. I think they're above 8th. Let's put it this way. I do think there's some hype to be had behind by putting them above global esports, but I don't know how high. Has Gen.G found an IGL yet? Well, I mean, I'm working off of the assumption that Munchkin's going back to IGLing, but that is a assumption. Yeah, Bleed's very strong on paper. It's just, man, the thing is I've talked about how I think their core is very good. I think Scary Crazy Guy and Darion is very good, but at the end of the day, their biggest strength is pretty much all 5 of them have clutch power. I wonder what their macro play is going to look like. I think they looked pretty good in the finals of Ascension against Scars. I thought Crazy Guy's calling there looked pretty good, but Zeta is a team that plays very macro-like. But putting Zeta above Bleed, yeah, probably not. I think that's a little too early. I think it's going to be too early. Yeah, we're going to see more of these. We're going to see more of them. And we'll revisit this before the actual start of the season in 2024. But I thought now that we have updates with Talon and even Gen.G and T1, it's a good time to revisit this. And okay, but let's say this is what we do. No, I don't think it's that. I'm not saying Bleed is going to have comms issues. It's just that macro play is not something you can like pick up in a day, right? Oh, yeah, let's talk about that. We totally just ignored the one team that we still have no information about before we do rankings. So, by the way, there was news about DFM. Surprise, surprise, something we've all been waiting for, except the news was not what we were waiting for. It was just an announcement that Takej is now going to be a content creator for DFM. So, if anything, we actually have less information about DFM, which is crazy. I was reminded of this because someone in chat mentioned it's sad that no one picked up Crystal, because I do think Crystal was a very strong player on Scars, especially at Ascension. He's also got experience calling, so I think he's a very big value. The only problem is then you would need to get over the language barrier. And really the only team left right now that has a spot for him is DFM. Oh yeah, Crystal also did go to China. You're correct. So that's out. I keep forgetting about that. I got to get him out of there. I mean, he could come back, but you're right, actually. No, that's a good point. So you know what? DFM is literally the biggest question mark of the year. And I'm sorry to say, but it's not looking great. It is not looking great. So DFM will continue to be at the bottom, pretty much because they don't have a team. I think Gen.G... Here's the thing. I think Talon's a curious team, but I don't know if I rate them that much higher. Like, I would say, for instance, if we compare it to someone like, let's say, I almost said Polvi, Global Esports, I think Talon's lineup has a very strong chance. I think they actually have a really strong chance on paper of performing better than Global Esports. But even though, again, like, these 5 players haven't played together, except for Polvi and Russ, I think just the pure experience that they have combined amongst them, which, I mean, I guess that's not really fair because Talon actually individually has a fair amount of experience as well. I don't know. Global Esports is a weird one. Team Secret, man, the only reason I don't want to go with this is I don't know how comfortable I feel. As much as I was all aboard the Bleed hype train, I don't know if I rank them at 4th going into the season. But then again, Ye and Scary are some really, really powerful players. Do I put Gen.G above GE? Oh, it's because I keep... Yeah. Does that look any better? I don't know. I mean, I think Gen.G looks fine. Like, I think Gen.G looks like a fine team. I think they could have chemistry issues, but I think overall they look fine. I think they could... Again, I think it's that same boat of, like... I feel like Team Secret, Gen.G, the current... Well, T1's more like a... I don't know what they look like anymore. But then, Zeta, Team Secret, Gen.G, like, these are teams where I'm like, I think they could very fine just be middle of the pack. Darian is our most consistent player. Unpopular opinion. I think there's an argument to be made for scary. Within Ascension and Challengers, right? Within Ascension and Challengers. But otherwise I would agree. I would agree that Darion's probably their most consistent player. Really? No, I don't think it should be that crazy of a thought. I mean, I guess we also can't really compare Egoist and Ye because it's like, well, they haven't really played with that team, so who knows? But yeah, how do we think this looks? Oh, I think it looks crazy. Paper X, DRX, RQ, Bleed, Zeta, Team Secret, T1, Gen.G, Global Esports, Talon, and DFM. Huh. I mean, Zeta moving up really makes things a bit crazy, but I think Zeta absolutely deserves to be somewhere between 5th and 6th. Team Secret, I think, is fine. I feel bad putting Global Esports this low. I actually think there's some value in this roster. I think they can turn out to be a very consistent team. I mean, maybe I put them over Gen.G, mostly because we don't know who the 5th is on Gen.G, but let's be honest, Gen.G's firepower is pretty strong. Meteor, Texture, and Lakia is a really strong crew in terms of just pure firepower. Team Secret over Zeta. I feel like these two teams, just throughout history, I feel like this is always going to be a very debated ranking. Between these two. Team Secret can beat Paper X and DRX on a good day. True. And they have. But not when it mattered. Right? We're not trying to rank their highest peak, just so we're all very clear. We're not trying to rate their highest peak. T1 over Team Secret. Well, before I did have that, but right now I'm just... I don't know what this team looks like anymore with the 7-man roster. You know, I don't know. True. I mean, Team Secret, it definitely sounds like Team Secret has an upgrade as well. I'm probably riding a bit of hypium from Zeta's showing from Red Bull. I think they're two younger players. You know what? You're probably right, though. If we're doing rankings, this is probably the way to go. But then it's like, well... Oh... So then does it just go back to this? Do we think this looks better? I mean, I feel like knocking T1 down just because they added a player all the way down to 7th is kind of crazy. But I also just don't have as much faith in them anymore, at least not off the bat, maybe over the year. Let's sort out T1. Let's imagine I think this is the starting 5. It's kind of hard to imagine that. I want to assume that either King or Ease was in the starting 5 over Carpe, but the reason we're assuming Carpe is maybe because of the whole language barrier thing. So if it's Zeta, Saya player, Carpe, Rossi, Excurate, the roles actually work out quite well. Carpe can continue to play Flash, which he started to seem to feel a lot better about. Zeta can flex. Between info and like secondary smoke. Rossi can main smoke. Saya can duelist. Excurate. You think Excurate's going to be on smokes? Why do I feel like he's going to be on Sentinel? But then again, I haven't like watched his stream, so if he's like only streaming smokes, then maybe. You think Excurate is going to be on smokes? And what is Rossi going to play? He's going to play Initiator? Then what is Zeta and what are Zeta and Carpe going to play? See, this is why I don't have as much faith anymore. It's not that I think they're going to be bad, but I just don't have faith because I have no idea what they're going to look like. Listen, I'm going to put them... I'm going to... Ooh... know. I think Zeta deserves to be in 5-6. I would have to put T1 in 7 if that's the case. Yeah, I think top 5 actually is fairly decent. I think people could argue that like there's a bit of Hypium involved with RQ and Bleed, and you know what? I won't say no. I agree that there's some Hypium involved, but I think it is what it is. So then the question is between T1 Zeta and Gen.G. And Global Esports is kind of this unfortunate bystander who I think if, just objectively, they could be like 7th or 6th or 7, but because of the other teams in the conversation, I think they get pushed out a little bit. You know what? I think we might even do this. But this is kind of like they're in their own group of like, yeah, objectively they could be in 6th through 8th, but we've seen more of T1 through Gen.G. Well, I guess not the current iteration of T1, so that's what we're going with. This is much more that these two are big question marks rather than I think they are objectively going to have a lesser average. I think this is okay. I think this is okay. Let's review this, because I think this is what we're sticking with this week. We have PaperX, DRX in the top 2. Interchangeable, but I'm going to stick with PRX above. Then we have RQ and Bleed. They're kind of going to be these rising star teams that can try to challenge the top 2, but basically they're like the next candidates to go to the Masters and things like that. So okay, yeah, that makes sense. RQ and Bleed, I'm okay with that. Team Secret is always there. They have that shot in 5th place. They can always take down any of the top 4 on a good day. Sure, I think that's totally reasonable. I wouldn't fault someone if they put Team Secret, like if they change Team Secret and RQ or Bleed. I think those are somewhat interchangeable. And then we have T1 Zeta, fairly strong cores, fairly decent experience, but some question marks to be had with Zeta. It's while their youngsters look very mechanically talented and their individual decision making seems like a good place to start, I gotta imagine that they're gonna need some more time to grow. They do seem to be improving the team overall, though, in terms of style. With T1, again, it's just we don't even know, other than, funnily enough, other than Rossi and Excurit, we don't know who's on the starting 5, so we don't really know what that looks like. But then again, no matter who it is, it's an entirely new combination and very big potential language barriers to overcome. So that's something they'll have to work on. Then you have... Give me 1 second. Okay. And then you have Gen.G. I think they have decent clutch power, decent firepower, but that's really what it is. The only reason I put them above Talon and G is because I think just individually, Meteor, Lakia, and Texture have higher peaks that they've already shown at a tier 1 level compared to most of the players on Talon and Global Esports. So yeah, I think that's there. And then Talon G, again, it's much more they're at the bottom because I have bigger question marks for them overall. But we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully we get some better looks at them soon enough. And then DFM, they don't have a team. So nothing against the player that's still on the team, and nothing against the brand. Well, I guess kind of, because you don't have a team yet. But you just don't have a team. So technically, you shouldn't even be in the rankings, because you don't exist in my head. But we'll have to wait and see what happens with DFM. So that's going to be our ranking for this week. To say the least, though, it's very exciting, right? Every new roster change and every new off-season event, we get new opinions on what these teams in Pacific are going to look like. And we've been eating pretty good here in Pacific for off-season. The Africa TV League is coming up soon as well. Africa TV Valorant League, AVL, in the first week of December. That's exciting. So there's a lot of fun to be looking forward to. And I do think overall this is very promising for 2024. I think it's going to be very competitive. And I think while I believe these two are going to still be the stronger candidates to go to the international tournaments, I think kind of like this range, right? The middle of the pack, 5 to 6 teams is going to be very competitive. I mean, it could be any of these three entering that conversation. But I do think it's going to be very competitive. So I think if you're looking for a region to kind of follow just for excitement of new rosters and different combinations and potential new rising stars and players, I mean, I'm not saying that the other regions don't have it, but I do think Pacific's definitely going to have its good share of excitement. All right. Well, we'll see how this changes, especially once Africa TV Valorant League comes around and a couple other off-season events as well. We keep tabs on it. We probably won't revisit this until DFM announces their roster, or like T1 and Talon like make sweeping announcements about what their starting five looks like. We probably won't revisit this in its own video, but once some of these other off-season events happen, we will be reviewing those matches as well. So we'll keep tabs on all these teams until the 2024 season starts. Thanks so much for joining me today. Of course, we will be recording the next video here right after this one, but for YouTube, this is going to be it for Rostermania this week, and we will keep tabs once the final piece of the puzzle has been added to VCT Pacific. We'll see you then.